Meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. Please rise if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and
for all.
justice.
Justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence or silent prayer as your conscience finds appropriate. Thank you. Please be seated. Council members, you have a draft agenda before you. Are there any amendments required to that agenda? Or for that matter, staff members, are there any amendments required?
Mr. Mayor, just, I don't know if you want to do it as an amendment. What I spoke with Councilmember Lingua about earlier, as well as yourself, in terms of the finance report. Do you want to take that off the agenda or just have me address it at the time?
Why don't you address it at the time on the agenda? I think we can just leave it there. Okay, hearing no requests for changes, are there any conflicts of interest that anyone has on agenda items this evening? And I guess we, all technically have conflicts of interest for the council committee assignments, but it's somewhat unavoidable that we have to vote on our own assignments. So, okay. With that, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is there any discussion by the council of this motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Are there any public comments? Hearing none, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq appears to be absent. Has anyone heard from him? Councilmember Mejia also appears to be absent. Has anyone spoken with Councilmember Mejia?
No, sir.
I'll check my email for both in just a little while. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Thank you. I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. That brings us to presentations. And the first one is Riverdale Park Arts Update. Robert Ludis and Samuel Williams. Please let us know what's up.
Well, I will say, like I said last year, Robert DeLutis has done a wonderful job in the lead role. He's the godfather on his consigliere. So, he's just taking this organization to a new level. I'm gonna let him do the report, but I tell you, we're at a level of operation that we've never seen before. And it has a lot to do with his leadership. So, I'm commending him for just a wonderful job. And I'm patting myself on the back because I picked the right guy. Robert, go ahead, my friend.
Thank you, Samuel. Can you all hear me? Well, Samuel does do some work. He's just pulling your leg. So, we're in good standing right now. Our budget, that's the most important thing right now. I think we're at about $6,000 holding steady with other funds coming in as we go. It's been a slow start to the year with the weather being so up and down. Now, the big news was, I think we discussed it at the last meeting, was the start of what we're calling train stop tunes. Hold on. My lights went out. Train Stop Tunes. And this is a new program that Jessica and John and I and Samuel and the council came up with, that we thought was going to bring some new life to the town center over in front of Banana Blossom Bistro near the clock tower. And so far it's been a huge success. We've had, I believe, 8 groups perform, and we're having them perform every Friday night, as many as we can do, rain or shine. Though we did have a pouring rain one week. I want to share my screen. I'll show you just a little summary of what some of the folks looked like. Here's 4 of the groups that were performing. Can you all see that? So we've had everything from a bassoonist to brass. We had a holiday brass group play. They stayed out and played for the December week. We had a clarinet duo. We had a guitarist who's not here in the pictures. We had a local musician, Nadeem Beggs. He's a singer and he does all kinds of vocals. So we've had all kinds of great groups out there. Foot traffic's been better some weeks than others, but it has brought a little bit of liveliness to the area, and people have been interested. Some people want to give tips and talk to the musicians, so that's always a good thing too, and just find out why they're there. So this program will continue for an entire year, so we will report back when it's over, or in 6 months to let you know how it's going. We do plan on continuing our concerts at Town Center Market. That's one of our flagship programs that's been hugely successful. Last year, we expanded it from 10 concerts to 12, and we'll probably continue with 12 concerts again this year. Those are going to start a little bit earlier this year, probably in July, early July, and continue.
Robert, could I interject something? One wonderful thing about those concerts is that we have tables on both sides. Towards the end of the concert series, every Wednesday, all of the tables were full. You could barely find a seat. That's how successful it is. It's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, so those have been well attended, and our future plans right now, we're working with a couple members on some local drama programs, and to start a program where we actually take the Arts Council sort of out of the doing state and more into the funding approach, where we're going to put out a call to local musicians and artists for them to propose ideas to us instead of all of the ideas coming from within the organization. So this is a little bit different approach, but I think it's more in line with what other arts organizations are doing. So we're hoping that we can do a test run on that sometime in the spring when things are better and the weather's better and COVID's gone. So that's pretty much it on our end. We'll take questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. DeLutis, and thank you for your continued efforts in these difficult times to bring arts and music to our citizens. Are there council questions for Mr. DeLutis or Mr. Williams?
Mayor?
Member Foe.
You say me?
I picked you. I saw your hand go up first.
I had my hand up. I didn't raise it though. No, I just wanted to say thank you both, you gentlemen, for what you bring to our community. I feel like artists have had a difficult time during this pandemic finding work, and just to be able to walk around and occasionally hear some live music has really been a relief for me and many of our fellow townspeople. So I just want to say thank you so much for looking out after the arts, and I'm excited about what we can do in the future to engage. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. I'm going to give the next one to Councilmember Lingua just for seniority. Councilmember Lingua.
Oh my gosh, my sister would be
be such a fan of what you're doing there because we were growing up and she would always come in with the trump card of elders priority. So, Mr. DeLutis, thank you very much for the report. And on the idea of new ideas going forward, I was wondering about some of the things that Riverdale Park Arts did before, one of them being Arts Fest. And I was, being that now we're looking at essentially 2 years without, what do you and Riverdale Park Arts see or envision for the Arts Fest in the future?
Well, we've batted this around a lot, and so I think the general consensus among the board is that we are not big enough to run a large event like that. And what's happened in the past is that it's sort of fallen on one or two members of the organization. Like the year that I think I joined, where Samuel ran the entire event himself, not possible. Well, he did it, but he lost a few years. So our goal is to focus on smaller arts events and to continue, reaching as many people or more. There were years where Arts Fest only had 100 to 200 people attend it. It was a lot of work to have a very small turnout. And so we're looking at smaller events, especially while we're still in this pandemic era, smaller events, limiting it to 25 to 50 people and having more events. So that's where we are with Arts Fest. Maybe someday in the future when the organization's bigger, we can do that. Though our membership has grown, I believe we're at about 60 members, which is doubled what it was when I think I came on board, Samuel. So
Yeah.
have grown the membership.
And just to piggyback on what Robert's saying, when we look at it from the earlier years, from a fiscal point of view, we were putting a lot more money, and our vendors numbers would decrease. So, and that was where we were getting our money. So we went from maybe 30 to 40 vendors to 15 or 12. And that just wasn't jiving for us, as far as, we were putting out money that the town gave us, but we weren't recouping it. So it really kind of became a financial drain on us as well. So without us doing that, we've been able to maintain a nice, keep a budget halfway stable.
Hope that answers your question.
So right now, it's just something that you're looking and, in a sense, reforming for the future. Is that what I can take away from this all?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great idea, and it worked for a while, but for somewhere down the line, we just lost that support. And so we weren't able to recoup it. And so it really, doesn't, and then COVID pretty much shot it. What little success it did have after COVID, it just died, so.
Okay. Well, I would be interested in hearing what ideas you have going forward for the event, and however you wanted to shape it, however you wanted to hold it, whenever you wanted to hold it, in what capacities. It was essentially the central event that really brought the Riverdale Park, what was then Riverdale Park Arts Council, to fruition. And while I admire what RPA has done since then and how it's developed and evolved, which I applaud you for doing, I am interested, and I think this council is interested in how you would like to see that event evolve or develop, as well as other ideas that you have going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. Let's move on to Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I think as my computer is telling me, my internet connection is unstable, as it says. So I apologize if I don't come through clear here. But I'm just curious. Thanks for all you do, first of all. But in line with Councilmember Lingwa's sentiment, I'd love to hear from you guys if there's anything that you would like to do that you don't have the resources to do that, you know, obviously, I'm sure you would love to build like a multi-million-dollar arts center in Riverdale Park. I would love to have that, but that is of course not in the budget right now. But what is there anything that we could do that you're like just that far away from being able to accomplish? And if there's anything not anything off the top of your head, I'd love to stay in contact and hear more from you in the future.
Well, the one thing that because of this new program we've started, the one thing that, you know, has been glaring at us is where do these musicians stand? Where do they play? And so to have some type of area where musicians could play or artists could sit, you know, a small gazebo, that type of thing that we don't really have in Riverdale Park, would be something that's on our wish list or dream list. So.
And another thing that's
So you
on our
talking?
wish- Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Another thing Robert and I talked about earlier is trying to expand our fiscal resources. What we'd like to do is get some money from the county or state level so that we could provide grants for organizations to actually do some things. And I know the town, you know, you're doing the best you can, but I think, you know, what we're looking at is what resources can we tap into that will give us some money so that we could give grants, maybe $1,000 or something to an organization to put on an event. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's kind of goes with what Robert was saying. Instead of us planning it, we put people in a position to do, you know, to do these things, and that we just don't have that resource. And he and I talked about it, and he gave me the green light to kind of look, but it's just not out there right now with all this COVID.
Gotcha. I'd love to talk more about that, about trying to find those resources. And in terms of the performance space, are you talking similar to the train stop events you guys have been doing, or like a more dedicated indoor space?
No, an outdoor covered
Outdoor?
area.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Foe.
Just to the venue space, we held a well-attended meeting with the Neighborhood Design Center a few months ago. I don't remember the specific date, but I have been a vocal proponent of us adding a stage-like space in the town center area so we could draw in performance, and I will continue to push for that. And I think we have the support on council here to try and accomplish something like that. I would love there to be music at all times, performance art at all times. I just think it can be an incredible space to bring our community together. So hopefully we'll do some work on towards that.
You don't know how many times I've heard Robert say that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you should see, it was one of our best attended meetings of the pandemic. And there's a big desire to make that center space that we can collaborate as a community. And I'm hopeful that we can do something along those lines.
Great, thank you.
Okay, are there any public comments or questions? Ms. Katz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Williams, Mr. DeLutis. As a town resident, I just wanted to also say that I've really appreciate what you're doing, and the level to which you're doing it is great. I caught a snippet of Jimmy Wren, the bassoonist, when he played, and I, for a second, thought there was an Antonio Brown moment going on. I didn't see any kind of signage or anything, but he was a fantastic bassoonist. He was doing a great job, and it's a wonderful experience for him too, I'm sure, to be standing there on the sidewalk playing his bassoon, and he's amazing. He was very good. But once again, I don't know, I was maybe I missed it, but it would be neat if, I love the name of this program that you have. If there would be some kind of sign, some signage that I could see from a distance, would let me know what's going on and not to, call the police to say, this young man, I'm not sure about him. Playing the snot out of this etude, but I'm not sure if he should be doing this with his bassoon right now.
Yeah, we do have a board, but we have not the manpower to bring the board
I
every
see.
week. So,
Fair
but
enough.
maybe at some point the town will have a board. We'll see. That is
It's
permanent.
it's worth promoting, right?
Yeah.
Well, the organization is worth promoting, obviously.
Yeah.
And why he's standing there making music like he's doing is worth promoting. So, but thanks.
Any other public comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much for the report. Appreciate the.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to both of you. I look forward to seeing more programs from you during the course of the year.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Mr. Jones, the fiscal year 2023 budget presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Oh, there it is. Perfect. So tonight's budget update presentation is going to cover the capital improvement projects, or CIP. To begin, as Mayor and Council are aware, in the current fiscal year, the town has an extensive list of capital improvement projects. Many of these projects are underway, and some will be completed in the fiscal year, and some will extend into the next fiscal year 2023. So as of now, current fiscal year projects are budgeted at $3,384,000, and staff at this point projects $1,769,000 to expended prior to the end of the fiscal year, leaving a CIP balance of roughly $1,756,000 to be carried into the next fiscal year. So at this point, while it's very early in the budget development process, information that is shared this evening, we will continue to explore, and the process will evolve as the FY 2023 proposed budget does come into focus. So for this current slide, this is the CIP assumption summary. We covered this in a previous presentation with some of the core assumptions for the CIP. So the first is to update vehicle equipment and infrastructure assessments. So at the current moment, department managers are finalizing their vehicle and equipment requests. What we do know today is that several Department of Public Works vehicles will need to be replaced in fiscal year 2023. Additionally, several police cruisers will need to be replaced. So as the town has been shifting to a lease program for police vehicles, whether it's the police cruisers or additional acquisitions, we do realize that new vehicles will be required. Now, on the infrastructure assessment part of that first bullet, the town is better suited now in terms of understanding the needs to improve town streets. In the current fiscal year, the town is catching up on road repair projects. Moving forward, the staff goal is to present annual road improvements in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. This will depend on a variety of factors to include the town's annual highway user revenue. Excuse me. The next bullet point is the multi-year alternative funding. So at this point, the multi-year alternative funding plan continues at a healthy pace. The town has rebuilt its relationship with the county regarding the community development block grant funding, and it's proven its ability to move funds. Additionally, other grant funds are being sought out, and the town has been successful in securing additional grants. At this point, in the last 3 years, this town has secured $455,000 in those CDBG funds. So, we do like where we are with our multi-year alternative fund planning. The next is the alternative project delivery. This addresses how we accomplish projects. So one example is crack sealing of roads instead of a complete road overlay, especially if this is effective in extending the project life. So we continue to explore alternative project delivery. The last bullet point is that PAYGO may be increased. So PAYGO is the practice in which financing to use funds. It's the practice in which financing use funds that are currently available rather than borrowed or brought from the previous year. So we continue to move forward with PAYGO by using funds from current year revenue. So as the town's financial position continues to improve, revenue net expenditures from the previous year will allow the town to make some significant transfers to CIP. While not current year funds, it is significant that staff do not project, any need to borrow funds, and we continue to maintain the PAYGO strategy. One thing that we would like to make note of, though, is that the ability to increase transfers is going to be tempered by the anticipated rise in the operating expenditures, as well as the impact of inflation. So it's one thing to keep note of as we move forward with PAYGO. The next slide covers capital project funding projections. So the town typically uses 2 types of funding for capital improvement projects. First being restricted use funds, and the second unrestricted. So under the restricted use revenues, we have highway user revenues, and we've projected $200,000 there for bond bills. Because we are still very early in the budget process, that is to be determined. PEG funds, we have a projection of $17,000, and with community development block grants, roughly an additional $375,000, not including the funds that we have previously received. So for unrestricted use revenues, transfer from the general fund, that figure is still to be determined. And then we have the sale of existing vehicles, which is another unrestricted use revenue. So the next slide covers the capital project projections. So projects to be completed in the current fiscal year. So we have a list of projects here, starting with the Longfellow Street stormwater improvements, Pollinator Garden, Town Center railroad fencing, bus stop improvements, Town Center underpass, neighborhood safety camera system, CDBG funded sidewalk improvements, building weatherization and stabilization, technology improvements for both the finance and the police departments, trolley trail lighting, street light acquisitions, and DPW staff workstation. The next, we have projects in the current fiscal year that will be continuing into the next fiscal year. Here we have street furniture and waste receptacles, street light improvement project, vehicle upgrades and replacements, public safety license plate reader, curb ramp improvements, street and sidewalk improvements, in particular the 54th Avenue Spring Lane sidewalk project, the 54th Place Park and Tot Lot, council chambers camera, municipal center renovation, the final phase of that. Then we have Field of Dreams, a Lazy Metal construction project, street light poles installations, food forest, welcome signage, 54th Park and Tot Lot, and then lastly is the bus shelter. We have new ones that will be installed this current fiscal year, but there are additional ones to be added in the next fiscal year. The next is a list of potential projects. It does not include capital acquisitions of vehicles and equipment, but we have the townwide sidewalk repair and demonstration project, the Queensberry parking lot design and construction project, Oglethorpe Street stormwater project, which includes design and construction, flashing stop and pedestrian crossing signs, roughly 15 to 20, 2 liquid de-icing sprayers, road improvement projects, which includes assessment, update, and repairs, street light conversion to LED, Rhode Island Avenue alignment design and construction, records archiving, digitalizing records, and then finishing with 48th Avenue sidewalk to Longfellow, park improvements, including rain protection and lighting. And lastly, to repurpose the 5,000 and 5,000 to Queensberry Road. So to summarize, for CIP, revenue in excess of expenditures is to be allocated to CIP, and estimates that we will need to transfer about $850,000 to fund CIP projects in fiscal year 2023. And lastly, seeking grant revenue to help finance projects. At this point, revenues are in excess of operating expenditures from the previous fiscal year of $1,431,000, and we will be using those funds to finance projects in the next fiscal year. So the next slide presents an opportunity for the mayor and council to interject, and if they have any additional projects that you guys would like to see staff explore as the CIP budget is developed, now would be a time for some input.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Was there input from the council? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jones, I was wondering if you could back up a couple slides to, why don't we go back to the 2022 project? Yes, there we go. I'm looking at these, and I don't know how this order was set up. I don't know if there's any priority to this list order here.
No priority. It's just a running list that we had created, but no, this list isn't organized by priority.
Okay, because that's good to hear, because when I see a list like this and I see sitting in the bottom half of the list, municipal center renovation, it brings a concern to me. Mainly because this has been an ongoing project for a number of years now. And I'm kind of wondering, where we are right now with that project. Yeah, how much more needs to be done? When are we looking at a completion date? Things of that nature. And perhaps this is something that's going to be mentioned later in this meeting. But when I'm seeing that sandwiched in between council chamber cameras and Field of Dreams Lazy Meadow construction project, it's just a little bit of a cause of concern in terms of what the focus is on that project when I see it that far down on the list.
If I may,
And
I'm sorry,
I can finish, and I'd like to finish. One other thing I would like to know, being that we're here at the beginning of the year, And it's been brought up under this in terms of projects that we look to get completed. I am curious in knowing when is the Longfellow stormwater project going to be completed as well.
If I may, Mr. Mayor. All good questions, sir. As Mr. Jones indicated, this is just straight from the approved budget and projects that will likely have some aspect of the project continue into the next fiscal year. In terms of the municipal center renovation, Ms. Lewis has that listed as final phase because there may be a few items that continue beyond June 30. But we fully anticipate construction to start soon. And some of our monies are restricted in time and use. And we want to get that done and move quickly. So this list is in no order. We have an aggressive list of projects that were approved, and we're moving forward on all these projects. And we were not prepared tonight to get into or go line by line in terms of where we are on the individual projects. This is more to say, here's everything that we're working on. Here's what we anticipate will be finished in before June 30. Here's that's going to have some aspects that continue forward. Mr. Jones, I believe, indicated that we will have drawn down $1.7 million by the end of this fiscal year. And I will ask Ms. Lewis Director Lewis to chime in here on your specific questions for the municipal center project, as well as the Longfellow Stormwater Management Project. Director
Okay, sure. Good evening, everyone. On the Municipal Center project, we are still waiting for the county to approve the permit for both Town Hall and PD. Those were submitted as separate permit applications as required by the county because they have separate addresses. I guess I'm happy to say that a lot of progress is being made on the review process for Town Hall. Not so much at this stage for PD. There seem to be some technical issues in terms of uploading the various documents that the county requires. Recall that we went the third-party route. And so there were a number of documents submitted by the third party. There was some type of corruption in the upload. All of that has been corrected. And so that project is on track. But again, the Town Hall permit review process is a little ahead of that. We actually anticipate that all of the components of the project will be completed by the end of the fiscal year. When we mention final phase, it takes into account the possibility that installation of the crossroad design project might not be completed. We have to work out some property ownership issues with MNCPPC. You know, we've talked about extending the sidewalk along the south side of Queensbury towards the cul-de-sac. All of those details have to be worked out, and it's certainly possible that they won't be finalized before the end of the fiscal year. Are there any questions on that before I proceed to Longfellow? So again, optimistically, we anticipate finishing all of the components that we've been talking about the last several years on the renovation project in all three buildings, PD, Town Hall, and Public Works by the end of the fiscal year. Regarding Longfellow, recall that we got an extension by the county to April 16th, 2022. We are working to meet that date. Ironically, what's outstanding at this point is a signed easement agreement from both of the private property owners. I believe all other elements of that permit process has been completed. I'm in weekly contact with the residents to answer questions, to assist in delivering their signed document to the county. We translated the easement document to one of the residents as requested. And it's really giving them some time to be comfortable with the idea of providing an easement to the county to maintain those improvements in perpetuity, actually. Again, we have to complete the project by April 16th, and that is final construction. I've gotten the okay from county staff to proceed with the solicitation for bids. I owe the county staff a draft of that this week, and I hope to get it on the street, if not by this Friday, by the following week. Now, we will proceed with that invitation to bid before we have a signed permit. There's precedent. We, in fact, have a contract for the municipal center project, obviously, before we have the permit. So there's precedent there that we're going to follow in this case as well. And we have to in order to meet that April 16th date. Any questions, additional questions on that project?
Councilmember Lingo, you're on mute if you're asking or saying anything.
I'm sorry. My concern is that here we are in winter. We're still waiting for an easement agreement to be signed and delivered for the county to acknowledge its receipt of that, putting this out to bid, and then building.
I'm sorry, sir, was there a question there?
Well, I'm getting to
having
it.
a difficult time hearing you.
Well, yeah, my question is, it's like, it seems like that's a really short period of time if we need to be done by April 16th with all these things that it seems that I'm hearing being said that still need to be done prior to this construction. Am I missing something? I mean, there's easement agreements still need to be signed. Then that to be sent to the county and their acknowledge of receipt, putting this out to bid, and then the construction. And this is all going to be completed by the 16th of April?
With the county.
I think you're frozen, Ivy.
I think we just lost, there she is, she's back. Ms. Lewis, you're on, Director Lewis, you're on mute.
All right, Councilmember Lingo, I was saying perhaps it was my system that was having some difficulty and not yours.
Okay.
I was saying that the design has been completed for some time. The permit application has been submitted. We finally have a better understanding of what the elements are that are involved in that review process. A final element is to get the signed and notarized easement document from the two residents on whose property some of these improvements will be constructed.
Right.
And we've been told by the project engineer for some time now that the actual construction should only take 30 to 45 days. So if we can have a contract in hand by mid-February and a county permit, we should definitely be able to meet the April 16th deadline.
So essentially you're talking that by March 1st, construction is going to begin.
Possibly, exactly. That's what we're shooting for. That's absolutely what we're shooting for.
Wow.
I don't believe we have time, and I've discussed this recently with county staff. I don't believe we have time to get another extension, given the time it took to get the current one. So I think that's what persuaded the staff to allow us to get an invitation to bid on the street before we have a permit in hand.
Okay. Now, by the county, you mean that this is the Department of Permits, Inspection, and Enforcement? Is that
DPI,
correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
through DPI. For me, that's a concern because I know currently with the CCAR CDC, they're dealing with an issue where they had pre-approved plans by DPI that they are now being held up because another inspector came along and said, oh no, you need to fix this. And until you do, you can't move forward.
Well, actually, I got Councilwoman Glaros's office to facilitate a meeting with all the county DPI staff that's involved in this project. And we
Okay,
certainly seem to be on the same page at the end of that meeting, and the review is proceeding according to what we discussed.
okay,
I expect if that happens, that's justification for the county extending the deadline to complete the project. Absolutely. That's certainly
Okay.
what I would go for.
so you're striving to make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed from DPI's end, so that you can move forward without any surprises, and should one come up, you would be immediately filing for an extension.
Absolutely. The council would have to be involved in that, though. I'm really hoping that what we discussed as being germane to this review process is what's underway currently. And again, what I understand is what's outstanding at this point are those signed and notarized easement documents. The project
Okay.
cannot proceed on the private property until those things are submitted. And I know one property owner has signed and had the document notarized and attempted to drop it off at DPI and was told the county was no longer accepting documents. They had to instead be scanned. Unfortunately, that person did not know that there's a drop box where that document was supposed to be deposited. And so we're trying to catch up with all of that. So that one I'm not that much concerned about. It's really the second one from the resident I haven't heard from in a while. And I send an email at least weekly over the last 4 to 6 weeks to make sure if there are questions, they are raised. And if the resident needs assistance getting the document to the county, I would be very happy to do that. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And I may have to knock on her door because I've sent several emails the last couple of weeks that have not been answered.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, for filling in those points. And if you need any help with that in terms of outreach to the constituent, please let me know.
I think I will. Thank you, sir.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, one quick question I have for Mr. Gentry on his other list regarding at the top and the bottom of the list on 2023 projects. What's listed as the Queensbury parking lot, as well as the dealing with the 5,000 and 5,002 Queensbury properties. The repurpose of 5,000 and 5,002 Queensbury Road, thank you. And the Queensbury parking lot design and construction project. Those seem to be one in the same. Could you please, or could staff please provide comment on how there is a difference between the two?
I'll weigh in here, sir. It's my understanding that we may have the Queensbury parking lot design and construction being what Director Lewis had talked about a few minutes ago, the final phase of Municipal Center stretching over, and it shouldn't be listed as new. It's really a continuation. And then the repurpose, you're correct, that is for that parking lot. But I believe that's what was intended there, and obviously we have it on the wrong list. My apologies.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on. That's all for now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if I could get some more details on where's the line here as I look at the plate reader project, and similarly on the next slide, the neighborhood safety camera projects. What do those entail? And what is the purpose?
So the neighborhood safety cameras is something that's approved in the current year budget. And I believe that we'll have the RFP going out and Ms. Barnes, correct me if I'm wrong, but within the next 10 days, we'll have that RFP going on for the design and design, supply, and install cameras. It's primarily east of the river. This was approved by the mayor and council in response to the increase in homicides that we were having in our multifamily neighborhoods. The license plate reader, I'll defer to Acting Chief Quixon on the acquisition and how that program runs. Acting Chief Quixon, are you there? Perhaps she had to step away. There is a description of it, sir.
I can take a
in-
response or email it at a later time if that's helpful.
That does help me, sir. And so we will follow up and send you an email on that.
Sure, thank you. That's all for me.
Any additional council questions or comments? Councilmember Lingley, your hand, I believe, is still up from the previous. I have two questions. They're all, one of them is fairly high level, and that is that I presume that ARPA spending, ARPA spending on capital style projects will be handled outside of this process. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We intend to come to the mayor and council in probably end of January, early February, with a proposed spending plan. And the expenditures would be captured in the budget for the mayor and council to consider in terms of, we would anticipate X amount of expenditures from the our sub-fund of the Economic Development Fund where the ARPA funds are housed. And but we would come to you with a spending plan separate from this.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, we've been doing the leasing of police department vehicles for a few years. And I was wondering, maybe not at this meeting, but just at a future meeting, if you could sort of discuss the pros and cons of that versus the purchase. And
Yes.
I'm interested in following up on that.
We can add that to our presentation at the end of the month, sir, because it's something right now that we're having staff discussions about whether or not we should lease or acquire.
I wasn't expecting an answer tonight. I just wanted to get it in your list of things just to handle.
Yes, sir.
Okay, are there any public questions or comments about the CIP process? Ms. Katz?
Yes, thank you. I had a question about the mention of the dog park. It said rain protection. What is that? And admittedly, I'm not here representing the users of the dog park at this moment. I'm just representing myself here asking this question.
I'll defer to Director Shelton or Lewis.
Yes, I have been speaking with some residents about their use of the dog park, and they had mentioned that they thought it could do with some way to protect them from the elements and from the dark. So I wanted to look into providing some rain protection and lighting for the dog park.
Okay, just from my perspective, I just want to share that it's my understanding that lighting in particular is not in alignment with I think the rules for that county park. So just to keep that in mind, I think lighting was something that had been asked for initially with the dog park, but I was sort of involved in that before the dog park was opened and after it was opened and the establishment of the rules. So that might be something you might want to check into with the county before really pursuing that kind of solution. And it also would involve, people using the park past dusk. And I don't know if there's that neighborhood that's right next to it as well. There might be some, there was a lot of collaboration with that neighborhood, I think, in reaching out to those people so that they understand what's going on across the street from them. So there's some other factors, I think, involved as well. You might want to reach out and consider. And then the rain protection part, I don't know. I wonder, like you said, the users approached you, so I won't say, but if people are going out there in bad weather or not. But I would think that one of the things that we've been kind of wanting for a while at the dog park is signage, not signage, but a bulletin board, a way to communicate with the users of the dog park. That wouldn't be expensive, I don't think. It would be just some kind of bulletin board, and certainly figuring out, does it need to be locked? You know, who can post things in it? That kind of thing might be involved. But I think that could go a long way, I think, bigger picture wise for the dog park, and understanding what some of the needs are there in the future, and what the town wants to communicate to the users as well. I think would be a lot of value added.
And Ms. Katz, Mr. Mayor, may I address that?
Please.
Ms. Katz, that's a suggestion that the mayor had brought to me, and we've looked at our budget. We think we can handle this without adding
Okay.
a project. So our goal is to put up one of those. We actually had tried to get some things done this past summer. It's been a little hectic.
Crazy. Sure, certainly.
So our goal is, as we approach good weather here in a few months, to go ahead and have something.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And just another little thing on top of that may or may not, we might not be ready for yet at the dog park, is some kind of storage box for the users, meaning not, that they could put bowls, balls. I don't know if digging has been a problem there or not, but little shovel to kind of cover up a hole if someone wants to do a little, the users want to do maintenance, because I know the town really does want the user community to take a more active role in the health and wealth of that dog park. So that might be something to think about in the future too, that may or may not need to be controlled access or not. I don't know. Once again, you have to think of the goals for having it. Other thought I had, if I might, not dog park related, can I go on with a couple other things?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. Just as an idea for the food forest, the food forest was on the list, but I wasn't, just to continue to expand the plants and things, I'm assuming, at the food forest. I know that's a stepwise project, modular project, which is great. Really appreciative of that wonderful project that's growing now. But just to throw something into the mix, maybe not for next year, but something that's called closed loop composting, which really is composting on the site just for the sake of using that compost there on the site. So the compost is created there and used there. Also something that might come up, I know there's a tree subcommittee now with the sustainability committee that Ivy is going to be a wonderful resource to that committee. I know they're going to be meeting here shortly, but from a budgetary standpoint, they'll probably bring other things up, but maybe some kind of funding to preserve champion or heritage trees that are on private property, so that we can help homeowners maintain the legacy of our oldest trees in the community, because they do require maintenance, as the town well knows. It's very expensive. So that was just one other thing I wanted to throw in for this coming budget. And no, wait, there's one other thing. Electronic signage. I know that we're really being creative here, using that signage right by the railroad tracks to communicate important things the town wants to communicate out, but maybe more finished permanent signage like other towns have. It's digital and that we can easily program messages into in other very prominent places in town. And I'm sure that's probably got a big ticket item, but that's always something I think about. And finally, I don't know if this applies to us much anymore, because I believe we contract out for a lot of the public property maintenance now, right? I think I have that right. Our folks, our staff aren't going out there with the grass trimmer and all that. But I don't know what other tools our staff does use in public works, and if that equipment is needing to be replaced and it is gas powered by any reason, it would be great if we started working towards a electric powered, battery powered tools as we move forward with our sustainability vision. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Any other public comments or council comments? Okay,
Mr. Mayor, if I may, on that last point made by Ms.
please go ahead.
Getty,
Please go ahead.
regarding either gas powered or electric powered landscaping and landscape maintenance equipment. I believe it's in Virginia, or I can't remember exactly where, but they put into effect legislation banning gas-powered equipment of that nature. I believe it's leaf blowers that they've banned, and I'm sure it'll go to other ones in other areas, and it might behoove us working with our contractors to try and get ahead of that curve. I'm just throwing that out there as something for council to consider and think about over the coming months.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Appreciate, Deputy Director Jones, appreciate the presentation and the discussion. Next item on the agenda is my report. And I'd like to start out by wishing everyone a happy new year. I hope that the year ahead for you finds you happy, healthy, and prosperous, as they said, and that you have a good year of growth and learning new things. I'm going to take just a minute or two to sort of do some reflections on 2021 and a little bit of a look forward to 2022. I feel like 2021 was overall a terrible year, but there were many bright spots also. Some of the things that were bad, the mentioned just moments ago, the homicides early in the year in the town, the Delta wave, the beginnings of the Omicron wave of the COVID pandemic, both very good. And just add that many people in town, including many people on this very council, have had personal losses in their family. And so a lot of bad things happened. But there are a lot of good things that happened too. The town sponsored multiple vaccination clinics. We got hundreds of people vaccinated. We ran a pretty flawless, as far as I could tell, election in the spring and a special election for Ward 1 in the fall. Both of those went well. We worked with the Greater Riverdale Cares and Greater Riverdale Thrives groups to feed people who were suffering from food insecurity and to provide gifts and support in many other areas. In the direction of sustainability, we had EV chargers that were installed in the town center during this year. And at the very end of the year, we had a nice holiday present of the trolley trail lights being installed and turning on, and also the 48th Avenue project being wrapped up. We made a lot of progress in moving forward on some other projects. We've made some progress on new locations for Capital Bike Share. We received a grant for the park at Tuckerman and Lafayette, the former Field of Dreams. We made some good progress on flood mitigation in parts of town. We anticipate even more starting in this year. Municipal Center project, as discussed, is on the edge of getting permits and getting going, and hopefully will be wrapped up shortly. And last but not least, it appears to have finally becoming true. Been talking about it for a while. The food hall coming to Riverdale Park Station, or the station, whatever you want to call it. So with all these things to look forward to coming in the year ahead, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic about 2022 and hope for the best. Moving on to things for which I'm not, at least in the moment, not so optimistic about. I'll talk about COVID. I hope that everyone knows that the current statistics are terrible. We have a huge case rate in the county. I just checked the number before this meeting. We have 225 diagnoses per 100,000 people per day. In a month ago, on December 6th, when we met, then it was 10. So we've gone from 10 to 225, more than 20-fold increase in daily diagnoses in the county. The positivity rate, which I was lamenting in December, was at 15%, has been reported recently over 30%. These are the highest levels of infection that have been seen in the entire pandemic. This is, as the arts group was saying, this is a very infectious, very easy to spread variant of the virus. And all of these numbers are coming from a testing system that is honestly overwhelmed, where people are waiting 3, 4, 5 hours in line in order to get a test. And many people are getting diagnosed with at-home tests that may not being caught up in these numbers. So we could be well over 500, maybe even all the way up to 1,000 cases per 100,000 per day. Terrible infection rates. And while I said in December that I hoped that it appeared that the Omicron variant was less harmful, and it does seem to be less harmful by a factor of maybe 3 to 4, maybe as much as 5. With all of those additional diagnoses, all those additional cases, then the stats for serious disease are much higher. So most of the hospitals in the state are full. Every day or two, I look at there's a system the state runs that gives the status of the emergency rooms, and almost every emergency room in the state is in code yellow or code red, saying that substantial waits are required, they're overfilled. Baltimore ran out of EMS units a few days ago. And of course, the daily deaths even from COVID are higher than they were. They're the highest numbers we've seen since last winter's surge. So all that's bad. So what can we do? What can we as individuals, what can we as a town do? So I have my usual list, and we'll start with vaccination. Given the speed of this wave of the Omicron infections, then it's probably too late for vaccination to do too much for this wave. But there are 9 more letters in the Greek alphabet after Omicron, and there will almost certainly be more variants beyond those letters. We'll have to find another alphabet to start pulling from. Omicron is there's speculation in the biological community that Omicron may have crossed over and now returned from mice. I read a story a few days ago that a large fraction of the white-tailed deer in Ohio have been infected with COVID, and that may come back to us. And so there's more variants on the horizon. It's best time to get vaccinated was, as soon as you could, and the next best time is as soon as you can. And I'll just say that even with these exploding cases, the exploding hospitalizations, that in New York City, which has some good statistics, they're about a week ahead of us on this this phase of the pandemic. 90% of those in the hospital, 99 out of 10, are unvaccinated. They have not received their vaccines. So the vaccines are still quite effective, even against Omicron, at keeping you away from serious illness. So please, as soon as you can, do that. However, we have to move faster than that on this particular wave. And so the first thing I will say is that everyone should stay home as much as you can. I am basically my household is in lockdown. We will go out for food and for essential supplies, and we are declining opportunities to meet with people, declining opportunities to attend events. I can't tell you how many municipal events I skipped during the month of December because I knew it wasn't safe. I knew what the numbers were, and I wasn't going to do it. So I ask that everyone who can stay home to please stay home. If you can't stay home, if you have to work, if you have to go to school, if you have to do those things, please wear the best mask that you can get. And I'll read in order the best masks. The first top of the list, the best one, is an N95. Next down on the list is a trusted KN95. These are Chinese equivalent of N95s, and unfortunately the K in KN95 sometimes stands for counterfeit. And so you need to be careful about where you get them. But they are essentially the ones that have passed the tests are as good or almost as good as the N95s. Next down on the list is KF94. This is a Korean equivalent of the N95. It's not quite as good because it tends to have ear loops rather than over the head loops, and the ear loops don't secure the mask as well. So those top three masks are the best. They are actually pretty close to each other. And if you can get one, if you can afford one, please use those. They will slow down the transmission. They will stop the transmission. And if you're out in the community, you can't help do that, please use them. Next down on the list, still quite good, surgical masks. Those are more readily available than the N95 style of mask. Those are still quite good. Please use those. And then there are, of course, the cloth masks that we started using at the beginning of this pandemic. Just because there was nothing else, there weren't enough KN95s or N95s to go around. Those are still worthwhile. Please try to upgrade, try to do better than that. If you are lucky enough to find a test and you test positive, isolate from other people. I've heard too many stories, way too many stories of somebody who tested positive and they said, oh, but I don't have symptoms. They still went to a party. They passed it on to dozens of other people. Don't do that. If you test positive, assume the test is correct, stay away from other people. And one of the statements I've read is that if you test positive on anything in this current environment, chances are that you are positive. I know of one case recently where someone had they all thought they could maybe see a mark on one of the over-the-counter at-home tests. They went and got a PCR test and they were negative. That's the only one I've heard of. Everybody else, if they thought they saw anything on the home test, they had it. It was positive. And this is from hundreds of people who I've spoken to. While you are isolating, one of the things to keep in mind is that ventilation is key. Having fresh air, having a lot of air exchange to flush the virus through the rooms that you are in, the places that you are. Make sure that those in your household who are not yet diagnosed have lots of fresh outdoor air, ideally with cross ventilation and a constant breeze. I understand that we don't all have houses that can do that. We don't all have heating bills that are going to be comfortable with that. Try to do it. Try to get fresh air, little trickle at least of fresh air going through your house. Again, if you have tested positive, everyone in your household who is over the age of 2 should be wearing a masks at all times, both the infected, the uninfected, everyone. And just as a way of thinking about this, I'm not 100% comfortable with this analogy, but I sort of think of it as you need to imagine that whoever is infected, wherever they are, is chain smoking cigarettes, and that you want to not even smell the smoke. Now, the reason this doesn't work is that, of course, you can still smell smoke through one of these masks. So you have to ignore that. It's not a perfect analogy, but you want to get the air, you want the air to be isolated where that person is, you want to have fresh air flowing through, and that will keep you safe. Next on the things that we can all do is to pretty much assume when you're going out in public that you are positive and everyone else is positive. Recent study in London, I think it was maybe a week and a half ago or so, which means we'll be catching up to them again in a week or two, is that 10% of the people in London were infectious with or had COVID, possibly infectious at one point. 10%, 1 in 10. So just assume that, and that will help motivate you to keep your distance, keep your mask carefully on at all times when you're out in public and anywhere near other people. And I just want to address one other issue. Why should you do this? You know, if this is a mild, if you're young and healthy, why should you do this? And the first reason is to protect others, particularly young children who are not yet eligible for for vaccines have a more difficult time wearing masks. And the immunocompromised, who even though they may have 3 shots in them, might be getting a 4th in a few months. They don't have as good of an immune response. They can't fight this off as easily as you can. And the second reason is to protect yourself. Something that hasn't been discussed recently a lot is long COVID. You know, this is something that first came up in the first waves. People aren't discussing it too much. Long COVID is symptoms that hang on months after you were infected. And I read a study last week sometime that 6 months after even a mild case of COVID, your chance of dying compared to those who have not had COVID is perhaps 10 or 20% higher from all causes. So you are protecting yourself. Many people with long COVID are disabled and unable to work. I think a lot of the low availability to hire people these days is driven by people who are too sick from long COVID to work. And so please try to avoid that. Try to avoid infection. This is not the cold. This is not the flu. This is a serious disease that can permanently damage you. I was asked by a good friend to discuss what students and teachers in particular should do. Because, well, Prince George's County is sort of taking, as far as I can tell, a week by week look at what the numbers are and deciding whether to be open or be virtual. There are other school systems where we have teachers who live in town. We have perhaps private schools that there are students in. And I'll just say, you know, that's not ideal. You're in typically a small room, a lot of people, a lot of interaction with other people. And you know, as I said, if a lot of people are positive, then you're likely to be sharing air with someone else. But everything that I've set up above applies just a little bit stronger. So masks, ventilation, those are the 2 big ones at this that you can do something now. You know, ideally everyone in there should be vaccinated, but masks and ventilation, getting a window open. Some people are making sort of their do-it-yourself HEPA filters that have a fan blowing into a set of HEPA filters, and it does something, it helps. And so those are the big suggestions that I have at this time. I'm sorry I don't have anything better. I wish I did, wish I had better advice. But everything that I set up above, wear the best mask that you can get everyone to wear the best mask that you can, wear your mask correctly and all the time, and ventilate, spend as much time outside as you can, and get as much fresh air flowing through classrooms, lunchrooms, hallways as possible. So I'll wrap up and sort of toss the ball a little bit to the town manager and answering the question, what is the town doing? And I'm going to focus just on 2 things. One of them, which is still in progress, is that we are trying to figure out how to fund ventilation upgrades in businesses in town. This might be the sort of UVC cleansers that we have in our train station in town center, or HEPA filters to be determined, and how exactly it's going to work is to be determined. But that's something that we are working on, and very hard to try to get that out as quickly as possible. And the second is that we are going to be distributing masks. We have an order in, I believe it's due in tomorrow, for approximately 35,000 masks. And we will be distributing to people, those to people in town who need them. The logistics of that are also still being worked out. And but that's what we're working on. We're trying to address this. We're moving as fast as we can to make this work. With that, I will end my report. Thank you. Pass it on to, unless there are questions, pass that on to the town manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of council and the community and the staff team. First, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that detailed information on COVID. that helps reinforce my messaging to the staff team. And it also reinforces to me that the staff team are taking the right approach. So thank you very much for that. As you mentioned, sir, and in the discussions that you and I had last week on what we could do, we have secured 35,000 masks. We are going to hold some of those back for staff. It's a combination of surgical mask and KN95s. We do have some N95s on in stock. Since the pandemic started, we've worked to maintain several months supply of masks. We reached out quickly to one of our regular suppliers when things became so apparent with Omicron. So as you said, we're working out the logistics, but the initial thought from the staff side is that we want to put these masks in the hands of folks that may not have the as readily the means for acquiring masks, and it may not just be money, it may be connectivity. Not everyone has an Amazon Prime account, and figuring out how to do that. And so Mr. Chelton and Ms. Barnes are working together to spearhead how the logistics will work. And we'll also be looking to partner with our established community partners to make distribution happen. On COVID, I do want to add, it's been a tough 8 days, 9 days for the staff team. As everyone knows, we have staff that every day go out in the community and interact in some high risk COVID exposure activity. So last week, we did have one staff member hospitalized with COVID. I'm glad to report that person was discharged from the hospital on Saturday. We also had several other staff members either COVID positive and battling it themselves, or taking care of a family member with COVID. So the increase has really hit us, and from a staff leadership team perspective, we are looking at it saying, what do we do? And if it sweeps through Public Works. Today, every member of our Public Works team, all 7 of them, worked on this storm, and I think did an outstanding job on clearing the streets. Given that the storm came at a time when people were trying to get out, and sometimes causing issues for our trucks to get by. And we have to be prepared for how do we deliver quality services if X% of our staff are either in isolation or in quarantine or sick themselves. And so that's something that the staff team is very aware of, from our messaging to the staff team and the leadership team, and coming up with contingency plans. How do we continue to deliver quality service when this happens? And so my message to the council tonight is that we're going to be as prepared as we can be, and we're taking good steps to ensure that operations will continue in the face of what I believe we will have more staff becoming positive, because we have staff in high risk situations. And so we do have good protocols in place, and we will continue to ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep our staff team, and by extension, their families and our residents, as safe as we can. So those are the only things I wanted to to share with the mayor and council tonight, and to wish everyone a great new year. I'm looking forward to working with the council and your leadership to do great things for the town in the year ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the monthly finance report.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may on this item, we're going to delay in sharing a monthly finance report with the mayor and council this evening. I did speak with Councilmember Lingua earlier today, the chair of the Finance Committee, and informed him of where we were. And so I will now brief the council and the community. So as you know, we present the regular finance report at the legislative meeting, and the mayor and council act on it, and they adopt it subject to audit. I mentioned just a moment ago that we've had some challenges with COVID, and we have in the last week. And so we had staff out, and now we have other staff out on vacation, and today's the 3rd. And we had a number of journal entries that still need to be made. And the value of the reports this evening would have been lost without these journal entries. And so with Councilmember Lingua's concurrence and that of the mayor, we're going to delay distribution of the finance reports until we have those journal entries made. That will be later this week. And then Councilmember Lingua asked earlier today that they could be approved later this month at a special session. Is that accurate, Councilmember?
Yes, yes, it is.
Thank you again, sir, for your assistance on this.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, please.
I know this is a bit unusual, but I would say, in the time that I've been aware of the actions of the council, this is a very one-off occurrence. And as statistics go, probably something that would be expected after a given amount of time. Given amount of time I'm looking at is the better part of going on now 18, 19 years. So my thought is a special legislative session prior to the work session at the end of this month. At least this way we'll be having the report during the same month. And it could be something that concise legislative session to receive the report and then act on it by a motion.
That sounds fine. We might have a few other items to put onto that agenda. Who knows? So,
That's fine. I hope that the other members of the council are amenable to this. If you do have another opinion on this, please feel free to express it.
okay, let's move on to the correspondence summary. The full packet is available, and unless there are any motions that need to be made from this, then we should just move ahead. I have not received, moving on to the fire department report, I have not heard from the fire department. Has staff heard?
We have not, sir.
Okay. I know that I suspect that they have been caught up in the emergencies. I know they happened for the last 22 months. So that brings us to council, committee, and ward reports. Starting, let's go ahead and jump into those, starting with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. want to echo everything that the mayor and the town manager said about our situation with COVID. For those who haven't gotten the text yet or on the text chain, the PG County schools are closed again. No virtual learning tomorrow for those who haven't heard. So that'll be another fun day for everyone working remote and managing kids, or not able to work remote and managing kids. So just want to make sure folks are available with that. And in terms of isolating, whether definitely if you have positive tests, if you have symptoms, make sure you're isolating, quarantining, getting tests if you can find one. I know at Paddock Pharmacy, which I think is below Oliver Street, which makes it in Hyattsville, not quite Ward 1. But my wife and I have been successful at finding rapid tests there in the past. So check there if you are looking for those. Definitely isolate, but also as the mayor said, I know I went yesterday and bought a ton of groceries from Costco to keep us from having to return to the grocery store anytime soon. Yeah, as much as you can, stay indoors, stay with your family. But you know, what I've read about this variant is that while it does spread incredibly rapidly, that actually enables it to move through communities fairly quickly. It infects everyone that it can find very quick and then runs out of people. I'm not, of course, a doctor, epidemiologist, or even as well read on this as the mayor. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but that is some source for optimism, especially as we also have a treatment drug coming on the market here fairly soon. So I do have optimism that as bad as things are right now, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that several times over the past 2 years, so we'll see how that pans out. But let's take care of each other, take care of ourselves, take care of our families, take care of our community. And thank you so much for everything that the town staff is doing to help with this COVID crisis and help keep the town running in spite of it. Those efforts don't go unnoticed, and I'm highly appreciative. On a more positive note, I had a good New Year's Eve, which is I did the same thing that I love to do every year despite COVID, which is sit at home and watch sports by myself with my wife. But I did have a good 6-pack from Denizens Brewing Company that I got from Ward 1 Institution of Town Center Market. Noticed it has a little label on the side now. It says brewed in Riverdale Park. I'm preparing my correspondence to the kind folks at Denizens to see if we can get brewed in Ward 1 in there. I don't have expectation that they're going to be supportive of that, but you got to ask the question, you know. As I continually echo, make sure, especially during this time when things are hard for small business folks, that we're taking advantage of all the great institutions that we have in our town. These folks are hurting. We need to make sure we help them keep open, and just always remember that when you spend money at a place that is owned, operated, small local business here in Riverdale Park, that enables your money to recirculate in the community, enriches more people, and enables us to have a sustainable financially community there. And also, I think this might have come out before our work session. I'm not sure, but there was a great review and article about 250 Barbecue in the Washington Post last month. For those that haven't seen it, I encourage you to check it out. It's really a treat to have a place like that in Ward 1 and in our town. I love it. They're gonna send me, I think, a gift basket or something for the amount of money I end up spending there. But again, all of our local small businesses, let's make sure we're helping them keep afloat as we're continuing down this COVID road. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, council member. I actually was in Denizens myself last week, and I think maybe we can print out a sheet of stickers that says brewed in Ward 1, and when they see you coming, they'll just slap it on your favorite 6-pack.
Slap them on there.
Okay. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
Yeah, I don't think that the stickers are going to happen, Mr. Mayor. My good friend Julie Verratti, owner and operator of Denizens, won't let that happen. The one thing that you forget, Mr. Smith, is I got to hand them the big check. Right? You guys remember that? I like the big check. And it's the only time in my career that I've got to do something like that. So it's quite, I'm going to utilize that as long as I can. All right, let me get serious. The mayor's report is always sobering. Prior to winter holiday, he told us not to travel, and I didn't listen. And before we got to my brother's house, my nephew tested positive, and it just severely dampened the spirit of the holidays. And I just think that, you know, having an infant, a newborn infant in my house, an unvaccinated infant, I constantly search for, you know, quality sourcing. I'm not a scientist by any nature, so I'm looking for something in layman's terms. And ladies and gentlemen, our mayor provides that every single meeting. He would respond to you in a variety of different formats. We are lucky to have him, and I would advocate to town staff that we utilize technology to cut up his mayoral report and share it across our social media platforms, because it's just remarkably informative and empathetic. And Mr. Mayor, I thank you so much for taking your job so seriously. So I got an email last night. I don't know what time it was, but I know that I was laying in bed. It was from the town manager, and it was talking about our DPW being ready for this oncoming storm. So I want to say thank you to the town manager, Director Lewis, Operations Manager Davis, and all of our workers that have been working, I assume, around the clock, trying to get our streets. I know that as I walk around, you know, there's clear paths in Riverdale Park to travel. And that's just because we have an incredible staff working for us. So thank you all that are involved in that. Secondly, I had a meeting with the new director of Riversdale, Maya Davis, and Samantha Ferris about the potential naming of the park at the location of the Field of Dreams. And I am beyond elated to say that we have a incredibly willing partner. If you read the handout that they offer at Riversdale about the Plummer family and the trials and tribulations that they went through to achieve just being together, it's truly a humbling story. After Adam Francis Plummer's wife was caught trying to escape. They were trying to escape together. The family was split up, and their daughter Miranda was sold to New Orleans, to a plantation in New Orleans. And it's remarkably sad to read the communications between a family being separated, because I don't know what that must have felt like, but I can only begin to imagine what the pain that they experienced was. So when Samantha Ferris suggested the name Plummer Family Park, it's something that resonated significantly with me. So the idea that I had for passage of this, or a council support of this, it's not passage, was that we could bring it up under new business at the work session, potentially at the end of the month. And I really think that in line what we have been doing as a community. I remember after George Floyd was murdered, just a tremendous meeting where we issued a statement of intent in the town of Riverdale Park. Following that, we made Juneteenth a paid holiday for our employees. I would love if we could have full council support for motioning to name this park after the Plummer family at our meeting, I believe is February 8th. I think it would be a remarkable homage to present during Black History Month. It shows what our true intentions are as a council and as a community when it comes to naming places within our community. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and I hope to engage every council member in a dialogue about that. And last but not least, this dialogue probably could have come up during the CIP discussion, but I felt like that was getting a little long-winded and I wanted to push it to this. I recently sent an article to a couple council. It's called Case for $1,500 Parks. And it just talks about how you can utilize spaces that have been ignored for years for the emotional benefit of your community members. It was truly a great article. And I really would love to have a dialogue where we could sit down and discuss multiple locations throughout the community where we could look to build these spaces to improve, you know, the general appearance and aesthetic of this town and provide people spaces. I know that we have already a few on this agenda or in this CIP agenda for this budget year. But I think that if we embrace our own residents and our own council members to do the same, I think we could get a list of 20 to 30 places that we could look at and improving and really grow as a council together in order to try and help find spaces in each other's wards that we could improve. So I'd like to continue that dialogue. I'll send that article to all of you, but I'd love to hear what it is you want to see in these kind of spaces in your wards. And I want to get behind that effort and I want to support it because I don't want this just to be a Ward 2 thing. I want this to be a Riverdale Park thing where we are taking pride in our community and in those spaces that we are trying to build. Nothing else for this evening, so I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I have not heard from the CDC as to meeting agenda. It appears that the meeting will be held not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, the 11th of January. Also coming up on the 17th, the CDC will, it's my understanding, is looking to sponsor events for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I know there's been outreach to the CDC to combine efforts on a project. I wish I had more at this time to share with you, but unfortunately I do not. Regarding what you said in terms of addressing the pandemic, probably could not be said any better, and I would just add my advocacy to members of town to do what they can, however they can, to help bring an end to this pandemic and to get a transmission rate down to 0. Any effort made is a good effort and is an important effort, and I would hope they would strive to do so. This is a group effort, and we all come out of this together so long as we work together and so long as we pull together. And with that, I will conclude my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Sadiq doesn't look like has arrived, nor Councilmember Mejia. So that brings us to Councilmember Mayers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to say I have no reports at this time, but I wanted to wish everyone a happy new year.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, that brings us to the public comments on non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Are there any public comments? Ms. Katz?
Yes, I just wanted to thank all and every staff member and council member and community member that was involved in the trolley trail lighting project, because I have to sit here tonight and admit that I think it looks pretty good. I think the light fixtures look pretty good and the temperature of the lights look pretty good, and I'm kind of enjoying a lit trolley trail. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I took a walk on it myself just a couple of days ago. It was great. Enjoyed it. Any additional public comments? Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is not discussed or debated. It's simply an up or down vote on all the items. May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved. Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. I will move immediately to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia is absent. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Thank you. Let's move now to the legislative action items. Item number 1, motion to authorize the town manager to send a letter of support to the Board of Zoning Appeals for variance request V-112-21 for 5909 Taylor Road, variance of 7.9 feet front yard depth. May I please have such a motion?
So moved.
Seconded. Oh,
Ooh,
I'll surrender. I'll surrender.
okay, motion made by Councilmember Lingua, and was that seconded by Councilmember Mayers?
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. Do we want to have a brief summary from staff about this item?
Should you feel that's necessary?
Just brief, 30 seconds.
Director Barnes or Shelton?
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This item came to us from the Board of Zoning Appeals. It is a request for a variance for 5909 Taylor Road for a variance of 7.9 front yard depth. The residents would like to put on a porch onto the front of their house. And in order to do so, and in order to obtain a building permit, they also need a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Our role in this process is simply to recommend approval or disapproval. The Board of Zoning Appeals inquires about our position, requests our position, and that would be the action we're taking tonight is to support that request for a variance.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Is there council discussion of this motion? I'll just say that I looked up this house in the county's data after the work session, and it was in fact built approximately 20 years, completed 20 years before the zoning ordinance was enacted. So the fact that it's not compliant with the zoning ordinance is not a big surprise. So thank you very much. There's no further discussion. I'll do a roll call vote. I'll start. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia is absent. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-OR-10, an amendment of the fiscal year 2022 budget. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. Would you like to discuss, Councilmember Lingua?
Yes, I would. Just give me a moment. I'm pulling up the document as we speak. We're a little quicker at it. Let's see, coming up. Here we go. Let's see here. Well, essentially, from what I'm recalling, this is a budget amendment. Essentially, it's amending the what we adopted for the both the operating and the capital improvement budgets for the town for the fiscal year, which began in 2021 and ended 2022. It was to increase the expenditures, leaving the town's capital improvement fund, and it was related to the amendment of the town's 2022 operating and capital improvement budget. Essentially, what we'd be doing is we'd be striking on page 1 of the FY 2022 budget under that category of, I believe, is fund expenditures. The line item CIP expenditures to strike the amount of $3,384,754 and substitute $3,479,754. And there are, I'm not going to go through all of these. There are 6 other amendments to this on this regarding figures and wording, which folks are welcome to read at their leisure.
Thank you, Councilmember. And this change was driven by a roadways project that came in over the expected amount. We approved that contract because it was the lowest responsive bid, and we were pulling from a roadways improvement fund in order to do this, so there's no impact on the rest of the budget. And we will just have less carryover next year, but it's all to good purpose. Is there additional council discussion on this item? Are there public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq is absent still. Councilmember Mejia is absent still. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Thank you. And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. The next 2 items on the agenda are introductions having to do with elections. These are barring major controversy. Typically, these are just introductions. There's no discussion. So would anyone care to introduce the first of these, Charter Amendment Resolution 2022-CR-01 regarding elections? Anyone wish to introduce? All you have to say is I will introduce.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I would like, oh, I'm sorry.
Pardon me. Just trying to bring up the document. Yes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Resolution CR 2022 Charter Amendment Resolution 2022-CR-01. regarding elections. There's one thing I noticed about this. I noticed the one thing on the material we were given, we were given a summary, but I'm not seeing the actual language. Here we go. Pulled up the wrong document. My apologies. Pulled up the PDF. It's for the purpose for amending the charter of the town of Riverdale Park to provide for the creation, composition, terms, duties, and responsibilities of the Board of Elections for the town of Riverdale Park. It's also to specify the duties and responsibilities of the Board of Elections, as well as alter certain duties and responsibilities of election judges for municipal elections, and to provide for designation, duties, and responsibilities of a chief elections judge and deputy election judge, as well as to make certain changes in style and terminology, as well as generally to relate to the conduct and management of municipal elections in the town of Riverdale Park. And this will be done by repealing and reenacting with amendments in the charter. The January 2008 revision, as amended, Article 5, entitled Nominations and Elections, sections 502, 504, 506, 508, 511, and 514.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Let's move on to item 4, introduction, ordinance 2022-OR-01 regarding town election procedures. Would anyone like to introduce that ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to introduce ordinance 2022-OR-01 for the purpose of altering the process for the appointment of town election judges, reassigning certain election duties and responsibilities, modifying certain terminology, eliminating certain obsolete provisions, and generally relating to the modifications to provisions and procedures for the conduct of municipal elections in the town of Riverdale Park.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Appreciate that introduction. Let's move on to legislative action item number 5, council committee assignments. I spoke to a few people about this. Everyone seemed okay with the committee assignments. And so I would ask at this time for a motion to approve my nominations for the chairs and members of these committees. I'll just mention that the council has already approved Councilmember Lingua is chair of the Finance Committee and vice chairman of the council. So this will be affirming that, and all the others are new appointments. May I please have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua. The second was Councilmember Foe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't see the little yellow rectangle light up around you, but I thought it was your voice. Is there discussion of this motion, these items? Is there any public comment? Ms. Katz?
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for not bringing this up during the work session, but I was just curious how these, especially the non-mandatory committees, are determined. I see there's 6 committees, there's 6 council members. It's definitely a time commitment for each of them to participate in these committees. But I think why I'm asking this question is I'm thinking that I'm wondering why there's not a potentially in the future there could be an appointment to the Sustainability Committee, considering that there is a town division for sustainability as well. So I was just curious how these the existence of these committees is determined.
So we established the Sustainability Committee as a standalone organization, and both Councilmember Lingua and I try to liaise with that committee on a regular basis.
You do a great job. Yes, thank you.
And but this is generally focused on the explicit activities of the town as an organization, and improving the town's positioning when interacting with certain outside. And I certainly wouldn't could consider creating another committee, or whoever's mayor next, I could consider creating a town sustainability committee. But we'd have to consider how that would interact with the established sustainability committee. But these I felt like there was a need. Community affairs has been in existence since I started paying attention to town government quarter century ago. It's had few name changes here and there, but it's been in existence. And economic development was first created maybe a dozen years ago, maybe a little bit less than a dozen years ago. And I thought that adding recovery to that was a good idea. It was something that we need to pay attention to as we hopefully get out from under the pandemic. So that's why those two, I added those two on.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you as mayor, taking the initiative to do that. And I'll just maybe this video of this meeting will persist into the future and into infinity. And one day they will look back and say, oh, that Laura Katz, she was so prescient about having the Sustainability Committee being a foundational committee for the town. But thank you, Mayor, for all you do, definitely, and Councilmember Lingua and Foe and all the council members for your interest and your support of sustainability, not to mention the staff's stellar support of sustainability.
Thank you very much. Are there additional public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq is not present. Councilmember Mejia is not present. Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. Thank you very much. Moving on to unfinished business, item 1, the town manager's performance evaluation. I received no feedback on the questionnaire, and so given where we are in the schedule, then I think we will just move ahead with the questionnaire as it exists right now. And those of you who have it in digital form and can fill it out in digital form, please do so. Please send me your filled out form electronically. If I can ask a favor of the town staff, that for those members of the council who wish to have a printed copy, if the town staff could print those out and mail them to those council members, and I will pick them up. I will arrange to pick them up from the council members when they're filled out. And ideally, you wouldn't start filling it out until after the 19th in order to get the last few weeks of the town manager's performance into your review. But if you feel like you pretty much know how you're going to rate him already, then feel free to do it a little bit before then. And I will start picking them up after the 20th. Is there an issue with town staff mailing out copies of the questionnaire?
That's already been completed, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, no vote is necessary on this. Are there any other items of unfinished business? Okay, let's move on to new business. There's an item, street tree program.
Director Lewis.
Sure. Good evening again. The town has participated in CCAR's Grow Green program since 2020. Through the program, CCAR plants large shade trees and small understory trees on private property. And at the town's request back in 2020, the organization agreed or found that they were allowed to plant trees on public rights of way. We've lost a lot of trees in town, about 30 over the last 2 years that we've been keeping count, likely more dating back to 2019 when the last tree inventory was completed. Since 2020, CCAR has planted about 70 trees in the town's right of way and Field of Dreams, with the number planned for this season that will result in about 4 new trees for at least every 1 tree removed. Staff at the beginning of the planting season will identify and compile a list of locations where trees have been removed, where they've been requested by residents, and where existing appropriate spaces are available for planting trees within the town's right-of-way. The list is provided to CCAR, which this planting season is scheduled to plant an additional 60 trees in 33 locations if tree supplies last. This intensified effort better meets the goals of the sustainability vision and commitment statement, which seeks to preserve and enhance natural resources, expand the tree canopy throughout town, and implement sustainable practices. However, occasionally staff receives opposition from residents to tree planting in the public right-of-way in front of their homes. A resident objected rather strongly to the tree planted in the public right-of-way in front of their home the last planting season and complained that they did not receive advance notice of that planting. In preparation for this season's tree planting by CCAR, staff sent a notice of the tree planting project to property owners in all 33 locations. 2 residents have actually objected to having a tree planted in front of their homes. The reason for the objection varied among all 3 residents, but the common theme is that the tree is simply not wanted. While staff appreciates diverse opinions, it's a challenge, obviously, to allow resident opposition to shape or amend the tree planting schedule and where trees are planned. Staff is actually asking Mayor and Council this evening to support the continuation of the street tree planting effort as currently planned. The new street inventory project will identify locations throughout the town for tree planting and recommend appropriate species for these locations that will guide future planting efforts for some time. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Are there council questions for Director Lewis on this item?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
To be clear, so essentially you're asking for council support of the program, planting trees in the public right of way, and that's with outreach to residents prior to planting?
Well, actually, we're going to make notification to residents each time we identify or where we have identified a tree to be planted. What we find among those residents who are objecting, the next level above staff is to go to council, frankly. And so based on our sustainability goals and values and how staff is planning to implement that or achieve those goals, we're looking to proceed with our recommended planting locations this season and are looking for council support to do so. Not just in terms of this incident or these specific oppositions, but just generally when staff recommends planting within the public right of way. We will take into account existing conditions, which we were not so focused on the first 2 planting seasons with CCAR, but this last time in the list that we prepared, we identified whether or not there were overhead lines, whether there's a distinctive tree box for planting, the condition of the existing right-of-way adjacent to where a tree is proposed to be planted. So we think we have dotted certainly more I's and crossed more T's in identifying locations where we believe tree planting is appropriate and are making a selection on species using CCAR's tree species guide book on what should be planted where. So we think we've given it a lot of thought. I've asked for the input of the town's arborist in a couple of locations. And we've gotten opposition. And I've spoken with most of those residents and beyond staff. As I mentioned, they want to take the issue to council for a different response.
Okay. So it sounds like then that by council supported this program, which, you know, I have no problem with. I like to be able to see us grow our tree canopy. And as I've stated before, I think a more in-depth tree canopy policy for the town, both addressing public and trees on public right-of-way and on private property, it's probably something to be considered by the council. My sense is that we're, by support of this, we're essentially ruling over the objections of some owners if they're not desiring a tree planted in the right of way in front of their property.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just wondering how this would go over. Were this objection from, say, a neighbor who's 1, 2, perhaps 3 doors down from where the council member is. I don't know if that's going to be the case this time, but I'm just thinking ahead if this were the case at another time. My thought is that if neighbor 1 year doesn't want to have, you know, out of a certain campaign, if there's an objection, and they send a reason, give a reason, that it be respected, and then when another campaign comes around, reapproach that same location again, be that the same property owner, or if they've moved, the new property owner. That's just my thinking on it. I just feel a little bit reticent of if there's an owner who says, you know, thank you very much for the offer, but I'd prefer not a tree.
So I guess a question that can be considered is what considerations should staff make when, in fact, we get opposition from residents to a tree being planted in the public right of way in front of their home?
It's hard to say, you know, because you know, I mean, for these given residents, you know, their expression that they don't want a tree. I mean, I don't have what, you know, their presentation of an argument in front of me to go by to understand.
Well, I could share some of what these particular residents shared with me when I spoke with them. One, an elderly resident simply says she doesn't want to have to rake leaves that fall from the town's tree. If we can't rake those leaves, she doesn't want the tree. Another one has just said the town hasn't done a good job maintaining trees. Pepco comes and in pruning to protect their utility lines, actually butcher the trees, and we certainly hear that. And so residents are trying to avoid or believe they can avoid some of the problems they've observed or experienced in the past. Admittedly, our street tree program or maintenance, I don't think was complete. I do and plan to put a lot of stock in this new tree inventory and maintenance plan since we last met. the application for funding through the planning department's planning assistance to municipalities and communities has been expanded to include a maintenance plan. So not just an inventory and condition assessment report, but a maintenance plan that will guide how we maintain our tree assets in the community for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And so I think we can address some of the concerns that residents have expressed. In one instance, the resident says, I've been here for 43 years. I objected 25 years ago to a tree planted in front of my property, and I object today. And again, had some concerns about maintenance. I've
Okay.
also heard from residents who have issues with their trees or, don't want to rake leaves to remove healthy trees from in front of their homes. Not everybody embraces or understand the benefits of trees, and maybe that's a part of the program that we can further develop, helping to educate residents on what it means to have a tree planted in front of their home, what it means to have a more robust tree canopy in town, the impact on stormwater, air quality, and a host of other benefits that residents might appreciate and help them see things differently.
No, I think it's a good program, and I understand, and I kind of find it odd that folks would want to do that. Yet at the same time, they're paying taxes into the town. Property, it's that's the town asks them to maintain that property in the right of way. No, it's the town's right of way to do it that as it feels it should. What I'm hearing is like out of 60 trees that are going to be planted out of 33 locations, 3 out of the 33, which is less than 10%, are essentially objecting. And my thought is, if the percentage is that low,
well, so just in terms of who we've heard from, some
Right.
residents might believe that they can influence the decision and may not have spoken up with their opposition. So clear, I understand the struggle you're dealing with. We have the same, but how, where do we draw that line?
Yeah.
Who ultimately makes that decision? And if there's more information you want staff to put on the table as these locations are provided, we can certainly plan to do so. I do think we're going to get a lot of information from this tree inventory, which again will include identifying locations where trees should be planted, the appropriate species for that location, and taking into account existing infrastructure and other conditions in those locations.
Yeah. Well, I think that would help because it's as positive and as well intended the program is. It's still a complex one, and it's one that I think just needs to be explored a little bit more in terms of how a greater acceptance of expanding the tree canopy, or a more universal acceptance of a tree canopy being developed in town, can be achieved, and with residents participating in that tree canopy. I'd like to hear from other council members what they think of this, and how they think we could possibly approach this, being that this is going to be affecting constituents in their wards.
Councilmember Smith has his hand up. Would you be willing to hear from him?
Please, I've said all I can right now.
Councilmember Smith. Can't hear you, Councilmember Smith. You seem to be off mute, but I can't hear anything.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would have a lot of the same concerns as Council Member Lingua, which is surprising. Not that I would agree with the council member, but you'd be hard pressed to find reasons that I would be questioning the planting of additional trees. But this seems like one of those cases. Definitely support the program, but you know, from what Ms. Lewis has said here, these seem to be valid concerns from these residents, especially folks who are elderly, don't have the physical ability, maybe not the financial ability to maintain these trees. And if it's a small number, that's something we should certainly look at, especially as Councilmember Lingua mentioned that, you know, we would be obligating these folks to maintain the town's trees here. I'm not sure what the process answer is, if that's like maybe bringing the final plan to the council and with any objections, and we can, you know, rule out. I'm not sure, you know, of course, being the rookie member here, I haven't been through one of these before, but I would hope that we could find some process that allow us some options, some flexibility in this program to make sure we're getting the full benefit, but we're not putting residents in a hardship.
Mr.
As a
Mayor-
point of clarification,
Oh, go ahead.
residents are not expected to maintain the tree.
Okay, I'm
What
sorry.
they object to, just want to clarify that what they object to is having to rake leaves from trees. So the town
Right.
arborist, maintains the health of our trees, does pruning, will remove a tree, does an assessment periodically, but residents are not specifically asked to maintain the tree that's planted in front of their homes. At the same time, I certainly understand, staff understands the responsibility as well as burden of having to rake leaves.
Yeah, sorry for that was my understanding as well. Sorry for my imprecise language there.
Okay. No, residents have actually said that, so I did want to clarify that point. But I don't think your point is lost in that there's responsibility there that some residents, especially elderly residents, may not be able to take on in terms of
Right.
leaf
And
removal.
I'm thinking of you know, disabled residents as well, possibly, who putting a tree in that spot may inhibit their ability to get, you know, groceries in and out of their car or whatnot. I think there are a lot of reasons here other than just like I hate trees to be opposed to a resident having one of these planted in front of their yard. And we certainly don't want to scrape the entire program, but as we go through, if we find that, you know, it's 4 or 5 out of 60, I think that's like an accommodation we should make.
I'm going to jump in here. I don't usually speak up on these, but I'm going to go ahead. I agree with some of the sentiments that I'm hearing here, that staff should work with the residents to do the best they can to accommodate their concerns. In particular, if you can give them a choice of a few species of trees, once you've identified the sort of class of trees, then I think that would be good. But honestly, you know, this is a program that was created by the council and is sustained every year in the budget by the council. And if there's a place that really needs a tree, it's not just that person's yard that it's impacting. It's impacting all of their neighbors, just as when a 6-foot fence goes in, it's not just impacting that neighbor, it's impacting everyone who looks at it. And we consider that. And so putting a tree in is similar. It can raise the property values of all of the nearby houses and improve, you know, we have all these sustainability issues of stormwater. We have crime issues. So having a greater tree canopy reduces crime. And so, you know, sometimes as a council member, as an elected official, then you have to deliver some bad news. I would like staff to do their best to work through with the residents before, you know, a definitive answer before the resident comes to us. But I think that there may be circumstances where you just have to have an unhappy resident if we want to have this program succeed. I do have one question, and this is dating back to ancient history, which is that it used to be that the number of trees versus the number of spots, number of trees available to plant versus the number of spots that could accept trees there's a heavy imbalance in that there were just a lot of empty spots. And is that still true, or are we now at the point where we're having to hunt for spots to plant some of these trees?
We really don't have that information. Certainly the exercise that we've gone through to generate this list for CCAR has been helpful. So on 3 separate occasions, we've identified from 25 to 35 locations for tree planting. And so at least over the last 3 planting seasons, there've been quite a lot of spaces available for tree planting. You know, and as I ride up and down, the question is, do we want fully tree-lined streets? I actually think we're going to lose a lot more trees, or need to. You know, a couple of heavy Bradford pear limbs fell today on Taylor. We couldn't move them without chopping them up. And so I don't know what ultimately was done, but I think we may have to make a decision to remove all of those trees systematically and over a period of time. And so do we replant where we've removed those trees? We removed 30 trees, you know, and I should have qualified that number earlier, because I don't know that it always includes, or that includes all of the trees that Pepco has removed. We'll have a better sense of that when the tree inventory is done. So I do think there are a number of spaces still available beyond this planting season. And I think there will be more as we lose more trees and deliberately remove trees because of their potential impacts, especially the Bradford pear. Those branches can be dangerous.
Sure.
When they fall, sure.
And I understand all that. I mean, I guess part of my concern is that we would like to plant these trees where they're going to be cared for well. And if somebody doesn't want a tree, then it's not going to be watered. It's not going to be reported if it's having issues necessarily. And so ideally we would plant it somewhere that it's wanted. But if staff and CCAR have identified a location that really needs a tree, and the resident is not, just doesn't want a tree there, then I'm perfectly willing to stand up and say, no, we have a program and it's in place. I've had to do that with residents many times for sidewalk projects. They didn't want a sidewalk in front of their house because they would have to shovel it. And seeing a snow like today, it's perfectly understandable. I have an enormous sidewalk down the side of my property. And as I told the town manager, I think it was earlier today, I actually bruised a rib last week. And so I'm not in shape for shoveling snow. And so my poor spouse was out there trying to find a path down the middle of this enormous long sidewalk. But that sidewalk presents benefits to the entire community, just like the trees present benefits to the entire community. And so, yes, I took it. And yes, I've had to tell people as both as a ward representative and as mayor that no, we have a program for putting sidewalks in throughout town, and there's going to be a sidewalk in front of your house. And similarly with trees, we have a program to have a robust tree canopy. And ideally, if we have other locations that can take the tree, we should prioritize those. But if we need to, I'll defend the program. Mr. Smith, do you have another comment, or is your hand up from previously?
That's previous. I'll lower it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there additional discussion of this item, or additional, Ms. Katz?
All right, I got 3 buttons to click here. So I appreciate the conversation. I really appreciate what Director Lewis has done. Fantastic consideration. She's even into this write-up here. I really resonates with me, all of the content that she's got in this write-up, all the benefits of the trees, etc. I would just offer that when folks say they don't want a tree, and I appreciate the extra information you provided, Director Lewis, but sometimes it's based on one of 3 things. It's a misunderstanding, which I think you touched on that in some of your comments. A level 1 misunderstanding of what would be involved. No, I don't have to maintain it. Okay, I thought I did. Or 2, it's a different value system. I happen to know of a home in the community here that has dirt for a yard, dirt front yard, backyard, dirt, but that's their property. I'm curious really what that's about, but that would be a gift to open from that person, meaning I really need to understand why the person has that different value than I have. And then thirdly, the one that's most difficult to overcome is when someone is just being difficult to be difficult, and they don't have a reason, they just don't want to abide by what you want to have happen. And those are the most difficult ones to overcome. So those battles might not be worth fighting for sure. But level one, certainly, let's make sure there's no misunderstanding. And I will volunteer the Sustainability Committee to help with outreach on that. Potentially, maybe we need some events about trees or more events about trees. And Director Lewis, when you meet with the Sustainability Committee, definitely I would say, if it's okay with the council, please throw this in front of them as well, as far as solutioning to make this path easier. I also would ask everyone to do what I did the other day, which is to go onto Google Maps and hit the satellite button so you're actually seeing the photograph of overhead. We have finite room for trees. And as Director Lewis stated, as we lose trees, we lose the big mature trees, unfortunately, a big impact on that picture. And even if we planted a tree every place we could, there is still finite and land that we don't own that's going to be developed, whether it be within the municipality or perhaps just outside the municipality, which we have up the road here on Riverdale Road or Guilford Woods. That affects all of us, losing that tree canopy. So we, like the mayor was saying, a responsibility not just to me and my house if I have trees and what those trees do for my health or my neighbors, but even farther afield than that. So I get a little panicky when I look at that Google Map overhead, because there really is finite, and the more development that goes on, the more double lots that are built up, another house is built upon, or two more houses are built upon. That's less space, not just on private property, but public property to benefit from trees, or even a new driveway cut. I'm not against driveway cuts to park your car on your property, but that, once again, consider take the small, the one person impacted thing and expand it to the other extreme. And if you can live with that, because that potentially is a direction you could go in. And if you can live with that, I guess it's okay. It's not a battle worth fighting. But I think it's a battle worth fighting. A lot of other people feel it's a battle worth fighting too. And I really like what Director Lewis is doing with the variety of trees we can plant. Some of them are more like shrubs. It's not a big oak tree that they're going to plant in your yard that's going to have all these leaves. It's a serviceberry that's in your lifetime is never going to get very tall and not have a whole bunch of leaves, but will feed wildlife, all kinds of things. So there's definitely pros and cons. There's gas lines and other things that trees can impact, I suppose, and someone might have a real concern about that. So those are, maybe there should be some exceptions for people that are really concerned. I know that Director Lewis is not going to say it's okay to plant a tree where it's hard for someone to get out of their car with their groceries. She's not going to do that. This is all about to benefit all of us in our environment, and it is a finite ability that we have to do that. So every little success that we can do in our generation, right? We need to plan for 7 generations after us if we were going to be in line with some of the Native American cultures. And so I would highly encourage that there be a teeny tiny bit of flexibility, but let's do everything within our power right now to plant as many things, whether they be trees or not, as many things as we can.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Is there additional council, staff, public comment? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ms. Katz for her comments. And I do think that, whatever plan evolves here, the default should be like, we plant a tree there. But I just hope that we can leave room and whatever the process is here for that teeny amount of flexibility for folks who, do have a legitimate reason to not want that tree there. Generally, like I said, I'm all for planting trees. Let's plant trees wherever we can, but there may be some of those circumstances where it, if we're planting 60 trees and there's 2 people that have legitimate issues with that, we can make that accommodation. If it ends up being 30 people or 30 homes, 30 residents out of 60, that's certainly not something we should accommodate. But yeah, I'm all for planting trees. I hope the default will be that we do plant the tree, but just leaving that extra room for flexibility.
If I could ask a clarifying question, sir. I'm trying to understand the general consensus of the council. A legitimate reason for not planting a tree. So we've heard from Director Lewis that if the tree area between the curb and the sidewalk is too small, for example, or if there's power lines, or if there's water lines or something, if there's something in the environment that impacts it, then we would view that as a legitimate reason not to plant a tree right there. If someone simply says, I don't want a tree here, or staff to say, okay, and then we move on to other locations where we can plant a tree? Or we just say, okay, we understand your opposition, but this is part of a comprehensive program. And so we are moving forward with planting trees.
Yeah, I think my initial remarks, I mentioned that I can't remember what I mentioned actually. I think, I don't want a tree there is not, to me, a legitimate reason. And my initial remarks, I mentioned being the rookie here and not knowing what the process answer is. So I don't have a suggestion for that. But someone who is mobility impaired and does not have the ability to break the leaves out of their yard from a new tree. And as Ms. Cass mentioned, I would hope that the first response to that is, well, let's find a breed of tree that won't require you to rake leaves or something like that. Or maybe there's something the town can do to assist with the collection of those leaves, aside from what we already do. I think the last course of action is to say, after we've explored alternatives, to say that there won't be a tree there. Let's find a way to get to yes on putting a tree there. But I just hope we do leave room for something that is a legitimate, not just, I don't want a tree, or there was a tree put here 25 years and I didn't like it then and I don't want one now. Things like that, I'm not particularly sympathetic to.
Thank you, sir. I think that helps us better understand.
Councilmember Foe.
I don't know how many of you know one of these 3. I do. Ward 2 resident that is not pleased at all. And I think we've been put in a predicament, potentially from the public outreach of former Department of Public Works head Leonard Addison. The perception that I get from this resident is that ultimately he was available to cut back the tree as she saw fit. So I think there's an element of this that is community outreach, and this probably falls in my lap, and trying to smooth things over. Part of me hears the words of Councilman Lingua, followed up by Councilman Smith, and said, like, we should be gracious and allow people to not have trees planted in front of their house that they don't want. But then there is the part of me that listens to Mayor Thompson, and he says, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not their property. And we are trying to build a tree canopy across this country, this state, this county, this town. And we need to improve upon that dramatically. I don't know how many calls you guys probably got about Bradford pears, but it's the only species of tree that I can identify significantly throughout community because of complaints associated with it. We need to dramatically improve our canopy. And I don't like the fact that 3 people are against this. But at the same essence of what the mayor said, like, let's move forward with planting trees. That's where I'm at. I just like, I don't find the complaint to be about a physical disability. That I would hear. I know one of these 3, and it's just about this idea that the town isn't amenable to paring the tree or pruning the tree the way that the resident would like. And I think with an appropriate choice, like Laura had mentioned, the service berry, that's not going to be a problem, right? So I think if we can utilize community outreach, selection of potential trees, and you know, a smile on our face, heck, I'll even help rake leaves if it helps me. It's not above and beyond what we're capable of doing. So, all right, I support it. That's all.
I just want to mention that there are a limited, as Ms. Katz said about limited resources, you know, there are a limited number of locations that can handle a large shade tree. It has to be on the side of the street that doesn't have wires. And I think there's a policy reason that we might not want to put a service berry on that side of the street. You know, you have a spot there and you can't plant it across the street underneath the power lines because then Pepco will butcher it later on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, these are things we have to keep in mind that shade tree will, you know, keep the asphalt from getting hot, will absorb carbon dioxide, will buffer the rain. And and these people who say they don't like trees are reaping benefits from them that they don't necessarily know about. So I agree with the outreach. I mentioned before that, you know, if there's a possibility just from an efficiency of using town resources, I'd rather not plant trees 4 seasons in a row in front of somebody's house that mysteriously all die. But push comes to shove, then I'm supporting the program because we have established this program for many years, and we have to support these programs. The policies that we establish, we have to, as council members, as elected officials, we have to support them. Even when it gets uncomfortable. Any additional discussion?
The only thing I would add, Mr. Mayor, is we focused on these few complaints tonight. I will say in my 5 years here, we've had plenty of requests to remove perfectly healthy trees, to top perfectly healthy trees because people complain that the tree blocks their view. Can you cut the top of it off? Or I can't see my house and I like to see my house. Or I like people to drive by and be able to see my house. We've heard, I would say, from dozens of people, I have, over 5 years, that they either want healthy trees removed or topped or pruned the way that they would like it pruned or not planted. So while tonight's conversation is focused on the most recent, I think there's a larger number of folks that would speak out against the town's tree program if they believe they had an option to influence whether or not plantings occur, or if they thought that they could appeal a staff decision that we're not going to top a tree or that we're not going to cut down a healthy tree. So I just think that there's more out there.
Councilmember Foe?
I feel like we've discussed this. I'm just not sure. Do we have a plan at removing Bradford pears throughout town? Healthy or unhealthy?
I understand that my predecessor had a plan working with the arborists to remove 10 of them per year. I actually had a conversation with some of my peers in nearby jurisdictions, and opinions are split about whether there needs to be an aggressive removal process. I've come to think that it's a very local decision. Again, when we do this inventory, we'll have a sense of the health of these trees, where they're concentrated, and have a little more information to work with in terms of how we should proceed.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I will answer the town manager's comments. I've talked to people who wanted to have healthy trees removed, or they have not yet generally described them as healthy trees, but they've said, I'd like to have this tree removed, and I simply say, well, please contact Public Works and town staff, and ask them whether the tree is healthy or not. And they have. Very often has been healthy. They've contacted me back, and I've said, I'm sorry, that's not our policy. And I will continue to do that. Because it's in front of their house, yes, but it's not their tree. And what if they wanted to dig up the parking spot in front of their house, take out part of the street and put a little tower there or something, park their it's not their property. The right of way belongs to the town. And I haven't looked at the ordinances recently, but my memory is that not only are they not expected to maintain the trees, they are forbidden from maintaining trees in the right of way. And so that should prevent them from committing devious acts against the trees. So I hope that this conversation has been informative and the staff is understanding sort of where the council is. I understand there's some diversity of opinion. So maybe we should touch up on this in 6 months again and see how people are feeling after they've survived a cycle of plantings and getting calls and so on. Any additional comments? Aaron, did you have another comment, or was your hand just up?
I was just lowering my hand.
Okay. Okay. Any other items of new business? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. This motion is not debated. It moves directly to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua? Councilmember Lingua? I'll come back to Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Sadiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia is absent. Councilmember Mayers?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua, are you there? Well, I guess we'll take that as an abstention. And so I will abstain also. Motion passes 302. We are adjourned at 9:54 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.